are back at it, and we are currently going over what an offer is and all the ins and outs of that. So I appreciate you tuning in into the buyer series that we're doing. And we've spent about 40 minutes already in the last two kind of clips, and we were only about halfway through. So I will try to keep this as brief as possible, but that hasn't happened so far, so don't be surprised if we cut this up a little bit more. So let's get right down to it. We are on page 5 of 8 of a purchase agreement. So we need to let the sellers know at this point that we have or have not seen their disclosure form. And I think I have one here somewhere. So when we go to list a property, the seller has to fill out certain forms. And so there are two main ones, and one is the seller's residential real estate sales disclosure form. And so this comes from the state, and it is 2 pages of basically their knowledge of their own property. So what works, what doesn't, what's included, what's not, and again, it's to the best of their knowledge. It's not a warranty that says, you know, I guarantee this thing to work as soon as you move in or whatever, but it's basically, okay, as of today when I'm filling this out, yes, the oven works. Okay. And so there's different sections to this. So you have appliances, electrical system, water, sewer, heating and cooling, the roof, any hazardous conditions, and then a section of other. And so if anything needs explained in detail, there are a couple sections here that says, you know, the seller could say, you know what, the oven does work, but one of the burners doesn't. That's usually the one I see the most, but or things like that. So basically, their knowledge about the property. And I should have this when we go to look at a home. I should give this to you, and so we while we're there, we can look at it. You know, their knowledge again of their own property. And so we'll sign off on those that we have seen them. Still going to get a home inspection, by the way, but that's just one of the forms. And then the other form is a federal form, and it's talking about lead-based paint. So lead-based paint certification and acknowledgement. And so they have to mark if they have knowledge of lead-based paint being used at the property, or if they have any reports specific to that property having lead-based paint. So so they have to disclose if they have knowledge or if it's there. And basically any home built before 1978, lead-based paint could have been used at some point. Very rarely do we find that somebody actually knows that they have it. But I mean, if you're looking at turn of the century farmhouse homes, yeah, it's probably there somewhere, but you know, without testing for it and scraping it here and doing this and doing that, you know, we don't know. So that's what they're going to say if they know it or not. Buyer acknowledgments here is that if there were reports about this, we had a copy of them, and then we have a federal government pamphlet. It's called Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home, and you can put a timeline to test for that stuff if you'd like. So there's that. So we're saying if we have or have not seen those. Then we get into title. So we want to make sure the seller can actually transfer title to the buyer, obviously. Make sure there's no back taxes, any liens, or side loans of the property, things like that. So we're going to want a title insurance commitment from them. Typically, they pay for that. And you're going to hear me say typically a lot because every offer is different. Okay, if you want to sweeten the deal a little bit on your offer, and you'll pay for that instead of them paying for it, you can. You know, you can totally do that. But normally, the seller pays for the title commitment, and they pay for the title search. So we're just going to note that, okay, yes, we want a title insurance commitment. Yes, the owner's title insurance premium will be paid by the seller. You as the buyer, the lender is going to charge you a policy as well, and that's going to be wrapped up in closing costs and things like that. And then we need to decide what title company to use, and basically says on the form here who's going to choose them, basically. And typically the seller does, but that's really not usually a big deal. And if you're trying to buy and sell at the same time, so you're selling this house, and we can do that. We can do a piggyback closing is what I call it. So you sell the house you're currently in, you sign all that paperwork, congratulations, and then you go to buy another one. Okay, and title companies can do that pretty easily. In that situation, you want to be at the same title company. You don't want to sell over here and then have to drive 30 minutes across town to close at another title company. It's just easier if it's all at once. So if that's your case, or you really had a good experience with a title company before, we can mark the buyer to choose. That's no big deal usually. Okay, then taxes. So real estate taxes. This is not sales tax or anything like that, but real estate taxes. So in Indiana, we pay in arrears. So we pay a year behind. So what that means is that the next tax bill that comes up, let's say this spring, is actually for the first 6 months of the prior year. Kind of confusing, but what we normally do is we prorate those taxes to the day of sale. And that's kind of the most equitable, because the seller is paying for the time they had the property in their possession, and then you as the buyer, you're starting to pay for when you sign and you receive the property. All that happens on the settlement statement. So they don't give you, when we prorate taxes, the seller owes that money because it was for the time they lived in it. They just don't give you that money in a check or anything. It's on the settlement statement at closing, and so you'll receive a credit, and that credit goes towards all your other costs during the transaction. So and there's some nitty-gritty details there, and it's totally property dependent, and so I will point those out if you're getting into a property that has some tax implications or things like that. So we'll talk about that. But other things that are prorated are any special surcharges or ditch fees or things like that to a property. So the next few pages should go relatively quickly. So the top of page 6 is talking about a homeowners association. So if there is one, if there's an actual homeowners association, we need to know. We need to review those documents to make sure you're okay with kind of the rules and regulations and the covenants and restrictions, stuff like that. There's going to be an additional provisions category here, and it's going to be quite long because it's just a bunch of things that didn't fit anywhere else, basically. So it's basically right here all the way down to here, and it's going to go over, I mean, I could read it, but it would be boring, and so I'll let you read it when we're in person, or I can just send you a blank document so you can read it, and whatever you want to do. But it's talking about air rights, mineral rights. If a home has been busted for methamphetamine production, the state keeps a record of those. There's a website to check. There's the Indiana Sheriff's Sex Offender Registry. If you want to check that, check the neighborhood. That's just kind of an advisement here. If the buyer and seller are not citizens of the United States, there could be some tax implications. It goes over that. And then there's some acknowledgments that you have the right to all this paperwork after you sign it, so we get you copies. And then we do have to disclose if the buyer or the seller is a real estate agent or holds a license, specifically in the state of Indiana. So, and then there's another category, and you'll see that it's blank. It's further conditions. So if we haven't covered something in here, maybe it needs better explained, or you want to make a little tweak to something, we can throw that into further conditions. And so I'm trying to think of a specific example, and it's kind of escaping me at the moment. But basically, if you want to write something into the contract, this is where you do it. Again, I will advise, if you're trying to purchase or you're trying to have a piece of personal property remain with the actual real estate, we do that on another form instead of this one. But you know, everything's so house and situation dependent. As soon as I stop the video, I'll think of something, but I can't think of everything off the top of my head. There's a section, it's talking about consult your advisors. So, you know, I am a real estate agent. I am not an attorney. I am not an accountant, and I'm not a contractor. And so if we need help, we need to go find it. We need to go get it. And so if you have tax questions, I have experience in buying and selling my own properties and for people as well. But again, I don't know the ins and outs of accounting and taxes. And then if there's a legal question, I can get you to somebody that can answer that. But that's just, first of all, it's not my role, but I'm not qualified. So we need you to consult your advisors if you have a question about that. So acknowledgments. This is or is not a limited agency transaction. So that was one of the very first videos of this series, talking about what agency is, what limited agency is. So the Cliff Notes version is if I'm representing both the buyer and the seller at the same time, we are considered limited agents, and we just have to signify if we are or if we're not on this form right here. Expiration of offer. So we're putting a timeline in for the seller to get back with us. And again, this market's moving relatively quickly right now, and so it's usually 24 hours or less. Depending on the situation, I have been successful in getting a response back in like 4 to 6 hours. That doesn't happen every time, and there could be, the seller could be upset if we kind of say, hey, I want to know in 2 hours. But I mean, if that's the situation, we're going to push. And as soon as we get done signing here, I'm going to upload it. I'm going to shoot it to the other agent. I'm going to call them. I'm going to text them and say, here's the offer. Here's the overview. It's in your email. We want a quick response back if at all possible. So, so they're under a deadline to get back with us. And so then you'll sign. You'll sign your name. The next stage is the seller's response. And so they have 3 options once they receive an offer. If they like it and everything is up to par and it's everything they ever hoped and dreamed, and it's what they're asking, or maybe they're willing to negotiate a little bit, they can accept it. They can say, yes, all of this in here looks great. We'll go ahead and sell it to these people. They could come back and say, you know what? They have offended us with their offer. They are so low, we don't even want to talk to them. Or if there were multiple offers, they could say, you know what, it was a good offer, but we chose another. And in that case, this offer would be rejected. So there's no more talking. It's done. We're rejecting your offer. If that's the case and it's not a multiple offer scenario, we can come back with another offer. We just submit the paperwork again, tweak it a little bit, but so far they can accept it or they can reject it. The third option is that they could make a counter offer. So they can say, you know what, everything in here looks great. However, it usually comes down to price. Instead of $100,000 that you offered, we really want 110. So everything else stays the same, but the purchase price will be 110. And that will come to us on a different form. We don't have to redo all of this again. It just says, here are the things that we'd like to change with your offer that would make it acceptable to us. If they counter offer, we're under a timeline to get back with them. They'll say, hey, we want to hear back by such and such date and time. And then you yourself will have the same 3 options. You can say, yeah, we'll pay what they want, okay. Or, yeah, we can give them an extra few days to get out. We wanted possession at closing, but okay, yeah, they want a week. Yeah, we'll do that. So that's acceptance. And then, or you can say, man, we're just so far apart, it's just not going to work out. Or, hey, we actually, in this interim time of the counteroffer, we found another house we like better. We'll go ahead and reject this offer. Or you can say, boy, we're close, but we're not quite there. Let's change a couple little things here, and we can send them a counteroffer. So that'd be counteroffer number 2. So, and honestly, you can counteroffer back and forth as much as you want until somebody rejects or accepts. So sometimes it takes a few times, and that's fine. And there's just a lot of things at play, and there's just a lot of moving parts. And so what I always advise is that it comes down to motivation. So that's all there is to it. Now, along with the offer, so we've had the 8-page purchase agreement, the offer. We've had their disclosure forms that we've signed. there could be some other stuff to sign as well, dependent upon the situation. So if we needed to write something into the contract, kind of like an agreement between the buyer and seller, there's an addendum we can do for that. If we're specifically talking about personal property at the home, at the property, there is an agreement regarding personal property. Okay, so we can do that. And then that's typically, every transaction is different. That's typically the first set of paperwork that goes out with your offer. So you're basically trying to put your best foot forward, and you're telling them kind of, we will buy your house under these conditions with these contingencies. So that's about it as far as your offer is concerned. So I hope that was valuable to you. As always, any questions, you can comment below or reach out directly. Go ahead and hit that like button. That helped me out too. And I appreciate you tuning in. Until next time.